Government Science Secondary School, Kankara, Katsina State, is still in the news after kidnappers struck, leaving behind pain and anguish. Academic work has been disrupted, the school premises vacated, while in town there is disquiet just as a high-powered federal government delegation has stormed the home state of President Muhammadu Buhari. They don't look happy. They shouldn't be, judging by the scale of brazenness displayed by the assailants. They have two items on their mind: pay a support visit to the state government and a sneak preview of what's about to unfold as regards their rescue mission.
We felt this kind of thing, which happened 2 days ago, the armed forces and the police and other security agencies must move very fast to ensure the students are rescued. We are doing this on the belief that if these kind of people are allowed to rest for a moment, we are also equally condoning this kind of activities. And the conclusion within most of the security agents is that it's high time we declare this kind of people terrorists. If we do that, probably people will now sit up, because once you are a terror, you don't have any right of your life.
So, if they don't know all that is in front of them, the governor gives them an idea. 333 of the boys kidnapped are still unaccounted for.
The children so far kidnapped cut across the state because the school is a boarding school. It houses all children from all parts of the state and some even from outside the state. It has a population of 839, and so far we are yet to account for 333 peoples, and we are still counting because more are coming out of the forest, and we are calling through the numbers, those parents that have numbers, to find out whether their children have gone back home, because we have discovered so many local governments, the children have gone back, but based on the record that we have, we are still searching for 333.
As daring as the entire exercise carried out by the bandits appear, it is not a fluke. Some mothers are already speaking out for their loved ones.
My son is one of those kidnapped. We are appealing to the government to consider our plight by rescuing our children. We equally appeal to our Muslim brothers to assist us with prayers to see that our children are rescued safely.
No doubt, this operation to be led by these security chiefs who have been severely criticized lately owing to cases of increased insecurity may just have to inspire hope again. This is perhaps a litmus test. The mission is clear. 333 children are missing and must be rescued.
For more reactions are continuing to trail the Kankara school abduction. Well, this time we've got Professor Wale Soyinka, who describes the incident as a slap across the face of the commander-in-chief, saying he's not in charge of government. So here's a direct quote from him where he says, "If only this latest outrage were a personal contest of slights between insurgency and power, alas, its resonance is felt far beyond. It is merely the latest in the serial stinging slaps across the face of the nation, and it draws blood from every sensing citizen. Over 5 years since Chibok, we've yet to anticipate and to guard against a repeat. We continue to hand over innocent wars cheaply en masse to the agents of darkness. He went on to say, when the president was summoned by the National Assembly to appear before it amid the rising insecurity in the country, he didn't initially consider the summon as below the standard of behavior, but rather responded to the invitation to rub minds urgently over a people's security anxieties as one who still struggled to preserve the tattered remains of his born-again democratic camouflage. Well, that happens to be latest in the latest installment in the series of reactions that this is generating, not just within our borders here, but globally, I might add. So we've got two gentlemen joining us this morning to weigh in on this matter. But right here with me in the studio is Tony Ofoyinton, who is the Director General, International Institute of Professional Security. That's IIPS. Good morning, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
And we also have, or we will, hopefully, do we have him now? Major Gabriel Adufieku. Well, he's not a development consultant, but he's a senior special advisor to the National Chairman Nigerian Legion. He's a consultant on organizational reform of the same Nigerian Legion. And then he's the immediate past Secretary General of the Retired Army, Navy, and the Air Force Officers Association of Nigeria. So he'll be joining us via Zoom from Jos. So he's been around, knows a thing or two about what is going on. But let me start with you here, Tony. Well, haven't seen all of this. Yes, a lot of outrage out there. But what is it that we're not seeing here?
I think basically if you ask what we are not seeing here, if I have to talk like a security professional, maybe...
That's why you're here.
I also look at it from an investigative point of view. I think it's better that it's good I lay a foundation that a little bit skeptical whether we have actually learned anything. This is a third occurrence, similar. The signature are just the same. From Chibok down to Dapchi, now to Kankara, the signatures are the same. And if you ask me, maybe most probably because no head had rolled, nobody had paid any consequential price as a result of all this security fallout leading to the abduction of all these school children. So it's now becoming like a recurring decimal. Some of us look at it as now like a business because there seems to be a lot of compromises. And if you also look at the way security agencies at that top echelon seems to either defend, either contentious about the numerical numbers of those that were abducted, the modus operandi. You also see that even from Enenche, to the extent that even soldiers were even present, so to say, as at the time these children were abducted, you see that there are a lot of disparities among all that. So if you ask me, I want to ask, sitting down in my office as an investigator, I first of all ask the question, who stands to benefit from the abduction of this school boys or students, as it were? And I look at it from a very broad perspective, look at all variables, some remote, some immediate, and I ask, okay, from antecedents, who are those that most probably would have done that? We heard of the, what do you call it, the Boko Haram being responsible for previous ones, but now we are not too sure. The military have come to say that they are just common criminals, speaking for, which some of us are like, seriously.
That's what the abductors are common criminals.
Yes, that's
so
they are common criminals.
In other words, the ideas of common criminals outweighs our security agency here if they're able to succeed in kidnapping these people.
You know, in short, I like I said, if John Enenche could say that because they were afraid that a shootout may lead to some of the kids dying. From report now, we heard that some of the kids have even died. About 2 of them have died already.
But how does that sound to you when you remember that? Look, this country spends trillions in budgets for the army. And is that the kind of narrative we're here to spend trillions? If you run a firm and you spend not even a quarter of that, and people come to tell you that, well, how would you react to that?
You see, the problem is that there's high level of mixture of politics in security. And there's high level of, you see, the corruption is so high. Now you are talking about ransom. Now, do you know that, look, the ransom that was paid on Chibok issues, those that were released, we don't know. The ransom that was paid on Dapchi girls, we don't know. Now that means that the ransom that will be paid now, you and I don't know. Now the implication of that also is this. Sitting that as an investigator, I said that I want to ask, who are those that stand to benefit? I will indict the state governor. I will indict security agencies. I will indict those that are, in government to a large extent.
On what grounds? Ineptitude or they stand to benefit?
Both. Both. Ineptitude and, of course, convince me that you don't stand to benefit. I hope you understand that. Now, I said I'm talking as an investigator now. I look at all variables. What stops me from believing that the IG can benefit from it, the chief of army staff can benefit from it, the governor can benefit from it? If, for example, it's like I said, I'm not talking politics here. I'm not talking politics here. I hope you understand that.
If you're talking about now, who stands to benefit, I mean, you're trying to establish motive. So does that suggest that they might have benefited, certain people might have benefited from previous scenarios, so if they did it before...
If they didn't benefit previously, it wouldn't repeat itself in Dapchi. It will not repeat itself now in Kankara. I hope you understand. Now, apart from that, the fact that there was no consequence, the fact that nobody was, to the best of my own understanding, I was not aware of anybody that was arrested or prosecuted. If you remember the Dapchi issue, we were told that soldiers were withdrawn. And not quite long, these people came. Now the question is this: those soldiers that were withdrawn, to what extent have we been able to establish anything for or against any one of them? Have so far been able to arrest anybody in any way whatsoever? And another thing is, to what extent are the security agencies be able to learn? There's what we call the signature of the offender. In other words, you look at the characteristics of certain crime. Now, if it happened the first time, you use it as a lesson to draw up a security policy. Now, if you look what the Nigerian Legion, they have what is called the Corps of Commissioners. One of the major mandate of the Corps of Commissioners is school protection. And they are very associated, they are associated more or less like the baby of the military. And they are so populated that they are in every nook and cranny of the country. The question is, to what extent has the military been able to use the members of the Corps of Commissioners to do that job? Or it's a simple thing. All you need to do, if you have 2 or 3 people in a particular school, have what you call an armed response team. An armed response team needn't be in each of the schools because of lack of manpower and the like. If you have 10, 20 armed response team in a state, for example, the members that are your Corps of Commissioners or security officers that are on ground can immediately, there is an emergency, all they need to do is make a call. Then the response timing. Yeah. You look at the proximity vis-a-vis the response timing. We're
going to get Major Odofiku to respond in a moment, but before then, Ayo, go ahead, please.
Mr. Feto, the argument that you have just thrown up now about some people benefiting from this is quite interesting, because indeed one would wonder, why would this continue if this were not in any way, something to consider? But the question that I would like to ask you is, to what benefit, to what end would anyone put children of Chibok, of Dapchi, and now of Kankara in the line of fire, pretty much as cannon fodders before combatants? What end do you think they stand to gain by doing that, if indeed what you're saying is to be considered?
He's trying to ask you, what do you think they stand to gain putting children in harm's way for this purpose?
Well, the issue of what a criminal stands to gain, there are multiples. One, that could be perpetrated, for example, to put the government in black light before the public, for example. It could also be done for monetary gain. it could also be done basically to push a point. You understand? There are various reasons why terrorists would do that. Don't forget that when the hard target is really hard, what the terrorist does is to look for soft targets. So talking about what they stand to gain, one of the things that they are gaining is the attention that you and I is giving them now. Another thing is the fact that the governor is already saying we have breached the president.
Well, in terms of that attention, I mean, if this happens, we can't turn a blind eye. These are children here, people's children. These are citizens. These are human beings. So we can't turn away from it.
Yes, that's why they are interested in those things that they know. Look, when a terrorist wants to gain your attention, a terrorist do not look for private establishments that have not really made any, that you won't even consider as news. They look for areas, people, and things that will make headline. And one of such, you talk about government facilities, critical national infrastructures. You also talk about people, VIPs, executives, and the like. And those are the main things we're looking at here. So if you look at it from that perspective, and of course, like I said, I see this also as a big business venture. That at the end of the day, you know, these are monies that even in 10 years' time, you cannot come and accuse the government that is in power that how did you spend X and Z amount of money. They are not money that are disclosed. They are not also money that are subject to proper scrutiny. If you say that, for example, you have spent 10 billion naira to release 400 or 333 students that were abducted, and 10 years later there's an open book to investigate that type of allegation, for goodness sake, it becomes justifiable.
Well, he has some more questions. Ayo.
Well, it's interesting, Chamberlain, thank you. Mr. Foyeton, if these issues that you are raising are true, assuming without considering that indeed it is so, isn't it something that the authorities should themselves already have caught up with and consequently identified certain possibilities or certain suspects that could have been benefiting from this over the past 20 years or more?
Well, in terms of, it depends on those who are at the helm of affair. And it also depends on whose table this whole thing falls upon. Now, things like this are always syndicated. It is not a crime that is perpetrated by one person or just one singular group. It's a crime that comes right from top down to the base. So it's a crime that at the end of the day, you are looking at the high. To me, and common criminals don't engage in the abduction of massive students like that. Look at it, takes an average of 1 hour. What logistic? You will need vehicles. You will need motorbikes. You need to move them. To move them from Kankara down to the forest, there, it's an average of about 2 hours or 2.5 hours to move them down there.
They walked to some.
Now look at it.
Walked to the place.
Now, do you know what it means to say you walk students? Now, what happened to the response team? If, for example, let us believe that what Major General John said was right, what was there a call for a backup? I hope you understand me now. To be able to say, okay, we saw these people moving students to X and Z place because he said soldiers saw them but couldn't engage. But what did the soldier do next? Time is always of essence in anything called abduction, whether individual or in group. So if now today, what is today?
All right.
Time is of essence. But have we been able to judiciously use the issue of the timing?
You know, you did talk about Nigerian Legion. We have Major Gabriel Adofigo joining us now, immediate past Secretary General of the Retired Army, Navy, Air Force Officers Association of Nigeria. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Kimberly.
Yeah, this scenario, it's one that when people just, I mean, when we look at it here, you just several questions, you know, about this kind of matter but the explanation coming through from those in positions of authority just don't make any sense to a lot of people who read it because they thought there are very basic things that could have been done here because if you have these caliber of people at the helm of affairs who are supposed to ensure these kind of things don't happen, yet this is all over the globe, as a matter of fact. So, having seen this yourself, what struck you?
Chamberlain and indeed the crew of the channel's television, I want to appreciate you all for the serious approach you have to issues developing in our country, Nigeria. For me, I would have thought since Saturday morning, when the news filtered into the media, Nigeria should have been in a more sober note. If necessary, flags should be flying half-mast, showing that the nation has been touched. My brother, when you talk about over 300 students, children of Nigeria, taken by some unknown gunmen, as we call them, or with the fanciful diplomatic name of bandits, it tells more of the nation. There is a language, once beaten, twice shy. Here we are, 3 times beaten, and it's like we are still dancing the dance in the same tune. It saddens me to know that, in fact, one of my first reactions when I heard of this was to tell a colleague that I feel like writing to the federal government to please stop paying my pensions. Not for any reason, but for the fact that I know the terrain being discussed. I know the environment in the north. I know the environment in the south. There can be nobody more Nigerian than the military family. It happened in Chibok. Massive extraction of our children. It happened in Dapchi. One of them is still being held on a very sad note, and little reference is being made to it. Now it has happened in Kankara. This time, I'm short of words what to say. But the truth of the matter is this. Fundamentally, how are we organized as a nation? It's easy to cast aspersions. It's easy to cast blames, to tell the armed forces you are not doing your job, to tell the police you are not doing your job. How are we set up as a nation?
So let me jump in there and ask you this. I mean, it's understandable for you to be upset about some of these things because, look, there are hundreds, if not thousands of Nigerians, even officers who, if given opportunity, this will never happen under their watch. They exist in this country. But in terms of how we are set up, because, I mean, we have the Air Force here. So if the narrative of the accounts of some of those who saw, say, they walk them to the bush. So the Air Force is there, the Army is there. So isn't there some sort of coordination? Couldn't they have radio? Don't we have aircraft with capacity to at least scramble and get in and get information and work together? What's going on?
Look, I'm particularly concerned about the situation in Katsina State. Did you notice the speed at which the governor was quick in telling the president they are already in touch with the bandits? This is an event that took place Friday, Saturday night. By Monday, they are already in touch with the bandits. If you are in touch, I appreciate the military for telling us they now have located them, and what they are working on is the strategy, the tactics of ensuring minimum collateral damage in the course of, getting back these children. That indeed is what any organization will do. But permit me to say this. You see, it's like we have a casual approach to national issues. The sensitivity as a nation is not yet there. Look at one American was abducted in Niger Republic and brought into Nigeria for hiding. The Americans came in, they collaborated with us and took back and indeed had maximum effect on those who have adopted them. But here we are. We have a situation. We are still dancing around. We are still, in fact, I saw on the social media this morning, 200 have been recovered. Yesterday, a report from the government says only 10 were abducted. Come on, come on. Even if it's only one child, the essence should be there. But coming to the issue, I have this understanding. History is good when you employ it to solve your present and probably consolidate on your future. When the Civil War began in the late 60s, 67 to be precise, because of the content and the nature of that happening, Nigeria applied what you may call the next available resort. Veterans of the Second World War, Congo operations, Tanzanian operations, who had retired from service because of the numerical requirement of the time, were brought in and within a limited time coached into the new happenings and were able to execute that civil war in 30 months. Today, we have a situation where nationwide, the armed forces are, like General Yola mentioned yesterday on your program, the armed forces, whether we accept it or not, they are overstretched. And if they are overstretched, I want to tell you statistically that there are an average of 50 veterans per ward nationwide. There are over 150,000 veterans that are still below the age of 60, and even if they're above the age of 60, with knowledge that can be used. It is on record that this nation, is on record that Nigeria, hello?
Pardon me, let me ask you, I mean...
It is on record that the armed... Yes.
Okay, my apologies. You know, does it come across to you as though we seem to pick and choose what we respond to and how we respond to them? Take, for instance, if there were to be a protest in different parts of the country, we know how the police or maybe the army will even respond to some of those things. But with this one, does it appear to you as though we're responding in equal measure to both scenarios?
You are going back to the fundamental issue I mentioned, our attitude to national concerns. You see, it amazes me the intensity and extent to which we mobilize to address very simplistic issues, and the intensity and extent to which we address what should be seen as a national concern. For example, I don't need to mobilize the whole armed forces to crush IPOP. I don't need to mobilize the whole armed forces. We knew when the Niger Delta issue was on. Permit me to say this. Niger Delta, I mean, even when we were Niger Delta militants issues, we in government knew that they had a genuine cost because we could see it. We didn't have to be told. And that's why when there was an amnesty, it was not a sectional issue. It was an issue to set Nigeria on a firm pedestal. So going back to your question.
Pardon me, but we need to go to break now. But we'll return and let you continue in that light and possibly proffer solutions. Join us again. Welcome back. Major Gabriel Adofiko, pardon me, we had to go to break. So could you go ahead and continue your train of thoughts regarding those fundamental issues, how we respond to issues, and what we should be doing moving forward? Can you hear me? Okay, I think we'll try and reestablish that connection. But Tony, well, having listened to him, he's raised some key issues in terms of how we respond to some of these things. So what's your impression in terms of what we should be doing now? Even though, look, we say this all the time.
Well, I think it's right you said. We said it all. We always say it all the time. Different media, different forum. But I think number one is let the president have a sincere political will to attend to the security challenges of this country. They call for the removal of the service chief. No matter how you think you trust the service chief, some of us believe that diminishing returns have set in.
But does the buck actually stop at the feet of the service chiefs? Because if you remove the service chiefs today, there'll be new service chiefs tomorrow. But there is a commander-in-chief.
That's why I said the first thing is the political will of the president. But no matter, irrespective of his political will, there are lieutenants that will have to execute the order. I agree with you. And I also agree to the extent that it is not as if the removal of the service chief is a one-stop solution, but it is just one of many solutions. If you
but he doesn't seem to be on the same page with every other people.
That is the unfortunate part of Mr. President's approach towards governance as it is. You govern the people. You are a president of the people, not a president of selected few, not a president of those that are in government. So if majority of the people, even if you like them, if majority of the people are saying, look, these people have outlived their usefulness, the normal thing to do as a government that listens to the people is there are officers that are equally qualified, excellently qualified. They'll come with new ideas, new innovation, fresh blood. The atmosphere will change. There will be restructuring. The system will be rejiggled. Look, the terrorists as it is now, they now know the most probable thing the service chiefs will do next because they've been doing it for the past 5 years. They are now very predictable to them. And that's why we're saying, look, why don't you remove the service chiefs as it is now, as much as possible? Have a good political will. It is not enough to say that you want to even fund. Funding is one fundamental thing. But another thing is equipping them and all those stuff like that. As good as they are, if the president does not have the good, strong political will to be able to do it, and I'm not saying it. I'm not seeing it in the president as it is now.
Yeah, because many will ask, are they actually as equipped as they ought to be? That's a different matter entirely.
It is a different matter, yes. But the truth is not that the military or the soldiers are not capable. The main problem is on the back of the table of the president. If he gives a sincere, true marching order, devoid of politics, devoid of sentiment, the soldiers are capable of attending to security challenges right if across the country. You can see what they have done in other places where you see, like you said, is the approach to security different in different environments in Nigeria. Look at the way IPOB was quickly attended to. Look at when government wanted to attend to NSAS. Look at the way it was quickly dispersed and all those stuff like that. For goodness sake, like the example that was even given, a single soul in America that was not even staying in America, stays in Niger Republic, all resources were deployed. What is the value that the government places on an average life in Nigeria?
Oh, Ayo. He's got a question for you.
So, for it, one other question comes to mind, you know, in all of this conversation that we're talking about. So, to a large extent, of course, we have mentioned the military, we have talked about soldiers, and we have talked about the service chiefs a good number of times in this, and that's perfectly fine. It's a rational thing to do. However, you know as well as many others that there are at least 9 agencies in Nigeria responsible for security of lives and property in the country. What we are talking about is improving intelligence gathering in the country. It's difficult for me to believe that such a thing as abduction of children in Chibok, in Dapchi, and now in Kankara would happen without security operatives being aware at all. That it's all hush-hush, no one knew anything about it. It's difficult for me to believe that. What you said about IPOB and what you said about, NSAS lends credence to that, in that people were able to anticipate that this was going to happen, and they stalled it. The security forces were able to stall it. How come we are only talking about the military? We are not talking about the police. We're not talking about the NSCDC. We're not talking about the customs. We're not talking about the immigration. We're not talking about those other agencies of government that are supposed to be performing the job of ensuring we do not have incursion from outside or from within.
Well, I think I agree with you that much emphasis is laid on the military and the police. It's laid on the military as it is now because we have a situation that is well overwhelming, above the capacity of the police presently. And unfortunately, the military, which is not supposed to be at the forefront, is now at the forefront. So naturally, you expect that since the military is at the forefront, they most likely will receive the credit and also the hit. But centrally, intelligence is very important. Now, it is difficult. I agree with you that to believe that intelligence wouldn't have gotten to DSS, that something like this is about to happen, or most likely will happen, is difficult. However, intelligence can also get to the appropriate channel. But once it is not used, as at the time it ought to be used, if either administrative bureaucracy or compromises comes in contact with that intelligence, the intelligence will become useless. So at times, it is not necessarily failure of intelligence. It could just be that you could have sleeper cell. There could be sleeper cell in the intelligence agency, in the military. Now, when I talk about sleeper cell, I'm talking about people that are sympathetic to the cause of the terrorist, are sympathetic, or they are members of the group, either directly or indirectly, and they are in vantage position, either because they are state governor, member of National Assembly, House of National Assembly, or State House of Assembly, or because they are in the police, in the army, or in the navy. It does work like that all over the country, all over the world. You understand? So when intelligence,
just one moment,
for example,
on that same thing,
comes on the table of such, those type of people, what happens is naturally those intelligence are killed. So it behoves on the security agencies to do an internal audit to see if they have moles among themselves and all those stuff like that.
If you can hear me, Mr. Foyeton.
Yes, please.
I get what you're saying, and a number of people might also see it that way, but just as you said, intelligence goes out, and some people get the information. What is supposed to be the process? Let's say, for instance, that the DSS, just as you said, gets this information. What is the process of using that information? Who is supposed to take the lead? I'd like you to answer that, because I have a number of other questions, one or two other things to ask you about the same thing. But who is supposed to take the lead in using the information that the DSS generates?
Now, it depends on the crime. It depends on the crime. If it has to do with things like internal crimes, for example, the police is supposed to be at the forefront of anything that has to do with internal crime and criminality. Now, if it has to do with international boundaries and the like, then you talk of the military coming in, where especially if it has to do with warfare and all those stuff like that. If it has to do with the sovereign, national sovereignty of the country, yes, the military comes in. Now, if it has to do with things like drugs and narcotics and the like, NDA will come. If it has to do with our boundary, the border lines and all those stuff, customs come in. If it has to do with maybe intelligence on the importation of arms and ammunition and all those stuff like that, bringing of contrabands and the like, at that point in time, the intelligence goes to the custom. Then the custom takes over at that point in time. If it has to do, for example, with illegal immigrants coming en masse, maybe from Niger, from Chad, from Cameroon, from the bordering country, then the immigration services will take over. However, it is DSS that has the central responsibility of processing intelligence generally. All these agencies, they also have their intelligence units. Don't forget that. But when it comes to central intelligence, the main responsibility of intelligence is domiciled with the DSS. So when they get that intelligence, all they need to do is send it to the appropriate security agency that is legitimately and legally saddled with that primary responsibility.
Let me ask Major Gabriel Adofiko on this one. If you look at the structure, the security architecture in this country, a lot of the leadership positions are occupied by those who know the terrain, people from the north. And those who are also in the field, they know the terrain very well. So one wonders, how is it that these kind of things are still going on? Major Gabriel, that's for you, if you can hear me.
If I got you, Chamberlain, I guess you asked with the kind of the personnel we have in charge of security architecture of the country, and the majority of them coming from the northern part of the country, and this kind of things happening in such extent and intensity in the north. isn't it?
I'm talking, yes, and I'm talking about the fact that they know. We expect that these kind of things should never even happen.
Yes. In fact, you are helping to exhume the mystics around the happening. I call it mystics in quotes. Now, I give you a typical illustration that might upset you this morning. If you listen to General John Enenche, when he was talking on this issue, he mentioned that during the case in Dapchi or in Chibok, negotiations were on with the abductors, and his level was not, then he was a brigadier general, his level was not in touch with that negotiation. That gives you a hint. Secondly, going back to what my brother sitting there, the Director General NIS, was saying, you see, there is a structured security architecture in the country. You have the closest to the people, and I repeat, the closest to the people is the DSS, but they are covered in their operations. They are sniffers. Then you have the police. The police is the civil face that interfaces. It is their duty to pass on the necessary information. Then you have bringing in, of course, we have a new one you call the civil defense. Nobody's even mentioning about anything about them. You arm them. In the NSAS exercise, they were not there. They were not visible. Then, of course, you have, of course, the military. The military is the last bus stop. In the circumstance we have in Nigeria now, there is no way you can take out the military from it as a front player. And this is because the nature of the enemy we are dealing with, the equipment of the enemy we are dealing with, and the style of the enemy we are dealing with is beyond what any local police arrangement would handle. If you see any of those equipment captured from these enemies, tell me, which policeman is going to stand in the face of a GPMG that fires 3 rounds per second from its barrel? And you want to carry out a civil operation against him? As for that, I am settled about it. We need a precise combined security handling of the issue. But my concern is this. The spread of this thing is so wide. It's happening in the Northeast. It's happening in the Northwest. It's happening in the North Central. It's happening in the South, and everywhere. The military cannot take all this at a time. So what do we do? Like I took us back to 1967. When these people were invited and brought in, they were given, 1, time economy was achieved, 2, cost of training was achieved, and they were put into the battle, and Nigeria crushed this rebellion in 30 months. I know that rebellion had a geographical definition, but we can see that what we thought did not have a geographical definition is now beginning to have a geographical definition in the insurgency. The insurgency is becoming now what is happening in the north. It used to be what is happening in Borno, what's happening in Yobe, what's happening in Adamawa. Now it is becoming what is happening in the north. So we need a concerted effort. If you ask my opinion, I will tell you that, look, let us run away from one danger. If you remove the service chiefs today, and one of them in his retirement tells you that this was the true situation we're in, we had all the information we needed. We had all the strategies we needed to quench whatever uprisings, but we did not have the command. What would you say to him?
Does that suggest that the National Assembly may be focusing on the wrong things here in terms of calling for the removal of the service chiefs?
Absolutely correct, sir. Absolutely correct. And I will tell you why. The National Assembly knows that the military commanders were not elected. The National Assembly knows that by the constitution of this country, they were not presented for approval by the National Assembly. The National Assembly knows that the helmsman in the responsibility of managing the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is the president. Why do they shy away from telling the president exactly what the president should do? 5 soldiers killed. For me, screwing it down to the armed forces, 5 soldiers killed in an operation is enough for me to say, if I am the chief of army staff or chief of any of the services, it's enough for me to say I throw in my towel. Somebody else could do it. But when you have the number, it's beyond just a military concoction. The National Assembly should direct its fireworks at the president. Tell the president, you and your team of executives, please, if this job has become too much, it's honorable to step aside. And if you find it difficult to step aside, can you come up with a new game plan that will put us at, at the secured platform we want? That is the language they should be speaking, not reducing it to personalities.
Right. Well, Major Gabriel Adofiku, we do appreciate your thoughts this morning. He's the immediate past Secretary General of the Retired Army, Navy, and Air Force Officers Association of Nigeria. And then we've also had the pleasure of Tony Ofoyeton, who is the Director General, International Institute of Professional Security. Thank you for coming on this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, and so the show continues in a moment. Don't go away.